reached the Surrey docks yet, but we're on our way. In Europe's far northern countries, the logs come down the mountain to find their way into the devouring jaws of Britain's industry. They're floated down the rushing streams and then loaded aboard the boats which bring them to London. And here it is, the timber that may eventually find its way into my new dog kennel or your new dumbwaiter.
I had a good job working for a sprinkler organisation in London, but it involved a lot of travelling all over the country. But then I started courting and I didn't want to travel, so I waited, and when the next lot of tickets were issued, I applied for one from my dad, and I was about 24, I was 23, 24. We had to carry the timber on our shoulders and stack them in sheds.
Yeah. And
we had to run along planks of timber from the start of one shed to the end of the shed. So that might be 50 yards running with timber on your shoulder and gradually working up to a height of 20 feet.
Yeah.
All the timber was bought by different companies, and the PLA stacked it for them under their sheds. Black dust, and you've got to go in the bars to go, when you go out the dock. There was no washing facilities, so we used to go out and go across to the local bars, pay tuppence to get a bath.
Yeah.
And that was the only way you could get it off. The deal porter was a man who carried timber from a barge, what had been loaded from a ship in the dock, brought alongside the quayside, and then unloaded by deal porters who had a particular headgear. They had an old bowler hat, and they had a strap built into it with a leather pad coming off the strap onto your shoulder, so that when you put the timber on your shoulder, it never cut into your body.
What about your hands? Did you wear gloves or?
No, no gloves.
You
never
got
had
splinters
gloves.
and.
Oh yeah. Never had gloves. You never worked for a company, you worked for the Dock Labour Board, and they gave you a number and a book, and wherever you went to work you had to give that book up for the day, and they would stamp it, and the National Dock Labour Board would get the money and pay you. If there was no work, you went up to a big holding pen, big building in the dock, and you put your book into the window. Your full wage would be £4.8
for the week.
For the week, if you never went to work at all. But you could go to work one day, and then what they call bon-pon, that was not work, bon-pon with the National Dock Labour Board the next day. So you might do 1 day a week or 2 days a week. Sometimes you do 5 days a week. It all depending where you was. If you was on a ship and it had a big cargo and you're on the number 1 hole, which had the most cargo, then you'd have a week's work there.
Yeah.
And you never had to go up to the National Dock Labour Board. It was only when you never had any work, at 8 o'clock, if you couldn't find a job, you had to go into the pen, the National Dock Labour Board, and have your book stamped. Well, the funniest moment I remember was we were working in a timber barge on the Elvin Yard, and there was a Russian timber ship alongside of us. It wasn't being unloaded, they were just waiting to be unloaded. They never had no men on it. But while I was there, I was in the barge next to it working. Then one day a little mini pulled up and a chap got out and walked up the gangway, and he had a big Crombie overcoat and a trilby hat, and as he went up he slipped and he went in the water, and I happened to see him go in. I run along to the jetty, and while he was there I put my hand over and got hold of him, but I got hold of his coat, but where it was so heavy in the water I couldn't pull him out, and I just held him there and he's struggling away, and I'm saying to him, keep still, keep still. And then one of my workmates, George Smith, came along and he sat on my legs because the bloke was pulling me over, and I had to shout out, get off, because it broke my leg. Anyway, the rest of the gang heard all the commotion and they ran out and we got him out. But the funniest part was he got out dripping from head to toe, water pouring out of his big Crombie coat, and he got in a little mini. And as he got in, the water poured out and he drove off, never said a word, not a thank you or nothing. When I first started in the docks, I went to the Surrey Docks. I worked in there for 20 odd years, and then I got sent, the Surrey Docks shut up, so then I got sent to the Tilbury Dock, and I worked in the Tilbury Dock for about 10 years, and they closed that down, and then they sent me to Tilbury, and I went to Tilbury and I worked for about 2 years there. But I didn't, it was quite a long way for me to go. You couldn't rely on the trains. If you never had a car, it was very awkward. And the trains, I had to get through Rob Rife Tunnel to catch a train. And you only had to have fog on the line and you never get on. Tilbury, I used to drive a stacker truck, drive anything, cranes, anything. And work on the jetty and take all the goods away from the ship. Yeah. Sometimes it was great big tree trunks, otherwise it was tea, sometimes it was wheat, maize, anything what came from a ship. I usually picked it up and run it in the shed and let other dockers sort it out. Of course everything had to be stowed, so that when lorries came in, you could go straight to the box or the article they wanted to put it on the lorry. A friend of mine got killed whilst we was working in the Victoria Dock at the Albert. He was driving the stacker along the quayside, and bits of angle iron, what had been sent up with a crane, fell out and it came down and it killed him. They offered a certain amount of money to people who wanted to get rid of you. So they offered each year, the money went up and up and up, and then I got to a stage where I didn't like going to Tilbury, so they offered a certain amount of money, so I took it. As for keeping in touch, nearly everybody where I lived were all dockers or stevedores. The old community worked in the docks, so you kept in touch all the time. When you went and had a pint, there was somebody you knew who you worked with.
Yeah.
In fact, I had 2 or 3 live next door to me, so you was always in touch with people who worked in the... If you lived in Rob, you associated with the docks. This timber what went in the water was picked up by people who had a licence from the PLA to pick it up and sell it. And same as on the Thames. Once every day you would see rowing boats rowing down the Thames with large hitches hanging out the back, picking up timber, and they would take it to a certain place and they would sell it, and that was their living.
Yeah.
But as regards as timber making rafters, they used to send over timber 50 foot long, 12 inches by 12 inches, 20 inches by 20 inches round, and they would come out the hole one at a time and they would land them in the water, and there would be somebody down there chaining them with an axe and a rope, and they would form a raft, and then they would tow them back and take them round to the staveyard, and there they kept them until somebody roped about 10 up, and then they float it round or the tug pulled them round.
Yeah.
And when somebody come in for one, they bring it round to the crane, chop the end off each of the rope each end, put a chain underneath, and the crane would bring it out and they would load it on the lorry. No, I mean, the biggest fire, when the war started, they bombed the docks, and being the biggest concentration of timber in England in one place, once the fire started it never went out. So every time the Germans come up the next day, they could see the fire from Gravesend.
Yeah.
And all they'd done was just follow the fire, and they knew they was over London. And the fire, they just couldn't put it out, it just kept on and on and on.